Utah, give me 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the Palazzo Truck Power Hour. I am your host, Robbie, and with me tonight is Ben. And hold on a sec. Wait. Oh, that show doesn't exist. Sorry, I'm just being told by Govia in my ear. Stick to baseball. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. No problem. Okay. Man. So welcome to the Prospect Power Hour, everybody. It is Robbie. I'm here with Ben. You can find him on all the socials at Big Gentle Ben. You can find me at Robbie Baseball 1 on the X or Robbie _ Mopar Fest on Instagram. And that is where I do the truck stuff that you guys were all just excited for. But tonight we've got exciting, fun topics to cover, Ben.
Yeah.
We were patiently waiting for these AFL rosters. They got announced. We're going to cover the names that we think everybody needs to know. And then we're going to talk about the guys that we think are not the headliners, but the ones that could either do good things, like Ben was saying beforehand. They could be protected from the Rule 5. They could become instant trade bait. They can do a variety of things, and we're going to cover all those players tonight. So all that said, Ben, how are you?
Well, as of about, an hour ago or so, I am doing significantly better than I was about 3 hours ago. After the Braves won the second game of their doubleheader today and clinched a playoff berth, that made things go much better for me. After it is maybe one of the better game 161s you will ever see. I mean, game that had a regular season game that had significance, and the way that it ended and the way that it went was incredible to watch. But to be on the short end of that game was no fun. So it was much better to just cruise to a nice, easy shutout victory in the second game. And it's like, yeah, okay, we can do this. This is much easier. So,
and I don't know, like in a few of my head-to-head leagues, there were some angry guys talking about rules and things like that. Like, because as soon as people on Thursday knew the doubleheader was coming on Monday, and one host site Fantrax extended and added this last day scoring period. So for lineups that are locked weekly or for lineups that are locked, whatever, it became basically daily lineups if the league wasn't already daily. And a few very astute guys in those finals are still playing, went and picked up whoever was available on the Braves roster and the Mets roster for the games today. And as soon as that happened, the other guys they were playing against started to complain that they shouldn't be able to do these, which again, like, I get it. I
get both sides.
Two schools of thought on it, right? Like, either don't change your roster. And I did unfortunately have, like, with other astute commissioners, I will say, we were all seeing different sides of it, but I just kind of thought you can't change a rule like as the commissioner at any point during your season without, like, you going rogue and, like, anybody can discredit you at that point. Like, a lot of stuff, because I've been in a league where a guy's done that more than once, different leagues where, commissioners are like, now we're going to do this and I'm ending this now, and, like, new rule as of week 6 or something. You're like, whoa, hold on. Like, I'm basing my play off this. So the idea of telling somebody they can't add players for basically one day, you just couldn't do it, I thought was unfair.
So,
and what are your thoughts on that?
What I bring up to folks is, if let's say they play those games Wednesday and Thursday, and so there's no games today. Would you have disallowed players from, if you're in a daily, obviously if it's a weekly you locked, but if it's in a daily, would you disallow players from picking up players to assist, to help their team on on that Sunday? Would you lock them out of the last day of the year just because? I mean, in all seriousness, the Dodgers threw out a crap lineup that day. They didn't have anything to play for. Same thing with the Padres. Padres threw out crap. There's a reason why
themselves.
There's a reason why Arizona won that day. If you look at the lineup that the Padres threw out, they weren't playing their A guys. They had clinched everything that they could possibly clinch. They said, you know what, this is what we can do. But that to me, and if you aren't going to make that rule, to me, changing a rule like that midstream is like changing from batting average to OBP midstream.
Yeah,
it's a very different tactic.
Significant.
I mean, you're planning for this. You've set up your roster. I mean, if you've got room to add Grant Holmes to your roster for today, it may have significantly helped you. Great, wonderful. Except you had to have room on your roster for that too. There's probably guys that couldn't make that pickup.
Right.
The guy who owned Spencer Schwellenbach got an extra start. He wasn't supposed to start again in the regular season. That guy got an extra start today, and I'm guessing he probably owned Spencer Schwellenbach without needing to pick him up. So, it's just, I don't know. There's a lot of folks that are kind of getting mad online for no reason, but it is what we like to do. And I just saw something come across. I haven't seen it a lot of other places. This just came across my AP news feed on my my work thing. Pete Rose has passed away at 80.
Oh, okay.
So and usually AP won't send something out unless it's pretty well confirmed. So, just something for the folks to know. And now there's going to be a whole lot of dumb people making a Hall of Fame comments, and we're not going to get into that today. So,
yeah, we're talking about guys who want to find themselves in a position to be MLBers first, and then we'll work on the Hall of Fame conversation.
Yeah.
So,
then 4,000 hits later, we'll have more discussions.
So. Exactly. Yeah. Before we dive in, or not dive in, but before we diverge off topic, we'll make sure we're staying on topic. We don't have news tonight because the AFL has all the news we need.
Yep.
With those rosters finally being released. So, Ben, let's just dive right in. We've got the AFL most notable prospects. We can just go in order. Jack Caglionone with the Royals. He is somewhat consensus top-ranked prospect of this group going off, with Henry. He is a top prospect. Yeah. You could look at any of the Mariners and we could discuss, like, in 3 years, what will we say about this crew? And I think Mariners guys could all be considered the best guy there. But anyway, Caglione is going. It's good. We're happy to see this. This is an interesting step for KC to run him too.
Yeah, I just have not been impressed at all in any of the game film. And I worry that he's going to go here and he's going to get overwhelmed. And that could be a big knock on his confidence. It's one thing when you've had a long season, you go to, the Midwest League in the middle of podunk nowhere, Wisconsin, or, Iowa or wherever, and you struggle for 3 weeks. Okay, that stinks, but oh well, not a big deal. Yet going down to the AFL where you're kind of a showcase guy, they're giving you all the help that they can, extra coaching and everything else, and you come out of there, let's say he, strikes out 35% of the time and only knocks out one dinger the whole time he's there. Are people going to drastically change their view of Jack Caglione because of that? They shouldn't, but I have a feeling that they will. I
don't know if they will. You think that they could affect, yeah?
Yeah.
And I guess prospect to prospect, that's a good observation, Ben, because
you
look at Caglione and you're like, well, he just can't screw this up. I guess that's one way to look at it for him. Next guy up, Ethan Salas. I feel like he needs
another similar one.
Offensive pop to me.
These guys that have struggled a little and they're going, and if they struggle again down in Arizona, that could be a bad situation for their prospect status. That said, that could be a great time to buy as a fantasy owner.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Because the next thing that's going to happen after AFL for all the dynasty minds out there are going to be your drafts. And if guys that underperform, as Ben's alluding to, lose some draft capital, you could be trading one of your picks this year to pick up a previous year's higher pick, banking on the fact that, like, these are blips. These are not long-term things to genuinely be concerned with. But yes, with Salas with the Padres, Super J2 guy, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's very excited. He did get all the way up to AA last year, then was at AA this year. Every time we reported on him, we seem to be saying we are not seeing it, but we understand that this is not supposed to be an offensive juggernaut at the catcher position at his age. This is just an athlete who is shockingly competitive. And again, catching the pitchers the organization wants him to.
And I think that's the big thing for folks to take away from his year this year. There was growth on the defensive side. He He wasn't a polished product, but he was way ahead of what a 17-year-old catcher should look like behind the plate. But he didn't have any of those moments where he went, oh my gosh, this is a problem as a teenage catcher in high A. And that's really positive. What I will say, I think is interesting. Normally the AFL is where guys can just absolutely run crazy because the catching talent that's down there could not care less to block a ball, could not care less to set up to throw to second. There are some exceptional defenders that are going to the AFL this year. I'm not saying that it'll stop the run game, but we might not see multiple guys getting 15 steals this year like we did last year.
And it will just be interesting to see. The idea is that these catchers are meant to hold base runners, which might be why the ones that are there are there. Last time I can remember a young catcher, not of the necessary hype of Ethan Salas, is Ivan Herrera with the Cardinals, who got sent at a very young age. And it was like, oh, wow, like this is the guy that's going to replace Molina. And then 4 years later, they were like, I think it's almost time for him to replace Molina because he just kept sticking around. But I remember he was so young.
Carson Kelly, and then it was Herrera. And I mean, we just went through this whole like charade of this is the next big catcher, Andrew Nisner, all these next guys that were going to be the next big catcher. But yeah, all right.
Well, we're still waiting for that next big first baseman with Tampa Bay. Xavier Isaac is auditioning with Mesa to be that guy this fall. I mean, what do we want to see, man? We want to see good OBP. We want to see some power while he's down here. Just don't go $190 and 18 at bats and then get taken out off the roster.
Yes and no. Would you believe if I told you that he is something like months older than Bryce Eldrige?
No.
I mean,
I didn't realize that. I thought he was.
Yeah.
I thought he was.
He was a high school pick and he worked his way up to AA. I did this earlier and I don't believe it's a full year of age difference between the two of them.
Wow.
So, I mean, the thing you want to see is just that he's not overwhelmed to me.
Yeah. I guess I think, just competitive.
And, he had some success in AA this year, but he only played 30 games there. I mean, he hit 211, but he didn't completely crap the bed. Let's put it that way. But yeah, he's only 20 and going to be so until December 17th. And now I'm going to look up Eldrige because now I made this comment. I better make sure that I'm not lying. And it helps if you can spell his name.
Well, that's okay. I'll move on to. I'll just go down to Eldrige.
There we go.
He's one of the guys that we want to mention. So he and Isaac are the two big first basemen. If we're not going to count the Cubs catcher first baseman, Moises Ballesteros. Those are the guys who we want to see. Eldrige has had, I think, an exceptional debut season, which I guess I'm going to give credit to Isaac thinking he was older, which is just a fun mistake I made.
So no, he is older, but he's only 10 months older. So it's less than a year older. So yeah, that's what it was. It's December 17th to October 20th. So I mean, less than a year of age difference between the two of them, which is, I don't think a lot of people would realize that.
I didn't.
Between those two. Well, there you go.
I didn't. And I was working on the show sheet. So I just assumed Isaac would. But anyway, so for Isaac, as you said, wasn't the most overwhelming, exciting year, but there were some pluses to take away for the age. Whereas with Eldrige, I mean, this is a guy who was drafted as a potential, as I kept jokingly saying a year ago, this is the next Ohtani. He was a pitcher. He's a outfielder. And thankfully, he looks to be settled in potentially as a first baseman, which at the moment, I'm okay with it, but I mean, is that really the best spot for him?
That's just it. I think I think they really wanted his bat to get comfortable this year. I almost wonder if this isn't a smart or we're sending you to the AFL and we would really like you to go get some time in right and left field.
Oh, okay.
Just see what it's like. Maybe you're going to spend 90% of your time at first base, but you're going to get a little time in right and left field just to see if this is a fit for you. Because with that arm, I mean, we're talking about a guy who is a had a mid-90s fastball on the mound.
Yeah.
With that kind of an arm, he's 6'7", and it says he's 223 pounds. I would bet you that's when he was drafted, because the boy has added on some significant muscle weight. He looks like he could play middle linebacker in the NFL with his build. Of course, you don't have 6'7" middle linebackers, but that's a whole nother discussion.
That's one of the other podcasts. Yeah,
we use a pigskin that's odd shaped. I know you Canadians, it's a little different than your CFL. So.
Our field is bigger, wider. We got an extra body on it, and the ball's bigger. We got bigger balls in Canada.
All right.
This is why we need that Hawk 2 button.
Yes. But
Eldrige, this is also why it was taken away.
This is exactly. But which, by the way, she has her own podcast now. You want to tune in and hear some absolute nonsense. Yeah.
I mean, capitalizing. Why she isn't on with us right now? That's Covier's fault.
Well, we'll just leave that alone. But in all seriousness, Eldrige all the way up to AAA this year, hitting wise, and even at AAA, 343 on base in 8 games. He did not look stupid as a teenager in AAA. That's incredible to consider. Last year, we had another teenager get to AAA, not look stupid, and everyone anointed him as the number 1 prospect in all of baseball, the next great thing in Jackson Holliday.
Yeah. Have we learned not to do that?
I don't know.
With Eldrige, or is Eldrige going to walk? If he is at least average, let's say, in the AFL, is he going to find himself in like as a consensus top 15 guy?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think, honestly, as guys reevaluate this offseason, I think even without a big year in the AFL, you would likely start to see Eldrige looking in the range of like a James Wood last offseason.
Okay.
That top 10.
Yeah.
I mean, James Wood with some folks was a way higher than that, but that for sure he's a top 10 guy. That's where I think you'll start to see Eldrige really, when they reevaluate and we have our top 10s go through. What I will say, this is maybe, I started writing about prospects publicly in 2013, and I was talking about them way before that on various message boards and things like that. I don't ever remember a top of the prospects heap that was as questionable as this group. There just isn't that holy crap number 1 guy. There isn't 5-10 guys that you're like, this is a future major leaguer that's going to probably make at least 1 all-star game. There's just not those guys right now. And
which at today's date doesn't mean, like, long-term, of course, doesn't mean anything. It means that there's development to be had, but it does make for, like, the more cloudy a field gets, different prospect analysts talk about, I shouldn't say prospect, just fantasy analysts talk about tiers, right? You got your upper tier guy. It's like the ace conversation. How many are true aces and how many are SP2s, SP3s, all the way through. When you've got cloudiness at the top, it allows for a lot of movement and then volatility from ranker to ranker. And at that point, it's a really good idea or I shouldn't say good idea. It's a really common thing for people to like plant their flag. This is the guy that I like, blah, blah, blah. Here's why. Eldrige, a year ago, was a high school drafted guy, pitcher, outfield, maybe. We'll see what he can do.
Yeah.
Who started hot and had some power because he was only going to bat because he had pitched. And now he has not since pitched, and he's been excellent. So he's only improved himself. I'm just concerned that like he could go all the way up too high, and then we're going to be basically Jackson Holliday in him, like you said, of like he's going to be so damn good.
And I do think there's a danger there, but with less quality up at the top of the list, top of prospect lists, this may also be, excuse me, this may be as good a talent pool in Arizona as I can remember. A lot of times you would get 1 or 2 of the like top, say, 50 prospects. You could make a good argument that 1, 2, 3, there's 3 of the top 15 right now on this list. When folks come out of it and start getting their rankings together, it's crazy to consider the level of talent. And then there's a lot more depth as you get into this year's AFL. There's a lot of guys that are going to have legit major league careers. Whereas, we were talking about, there's a lot of guys usually that it's like, is this guy even worth protecting from Rule 5? And so that's why he's going out there. There's a lot of guys that are legit. Yeah, it's not a future starting second baseman, but there's a lot of guys here who have a future fourth outfielder on them, or a future left-handed reliever that, these are legit major leaguers. And I mean, most of the time, your AFL guys, there's a handful of them that you really know. But no, that beyond that, not so much. So
yeah, and usually it's pitchers, right? We're talking like, oh man, they're throwing such crappy pitchers this year.
Yeah.
So the hitters are able to do XYZ, like you mentioned about stolen bases last year. There wasn't an emphasis on keeping the catching game tight, keeping runners tight. It just wasn't part of seemingly wasn't part of the game plan, and runners took advantage of it. Or other coaches were like, yeah, run, go ahead, let's see what you got to do. So a couple guys that we'll just to keep throwing some names out here, could see moving around. Of course, Mariners, Colt Emerson, Colt Young, and was that the only two for that? Yeah, and I guess Colson, Montgomery. They could all be on the move as far as running those base paths. I'm really interested, and everyone is going to probably be saying this for like 5 years until we either forget about him or he legitimizes himself as a healthy guy. Chase DeLauder with the Guardians. Outfielder, this was injured at the time of his draft, or shortly after, whatever. I can't remember what it was. I think it was injured when he was drafted, and then he slipped down boards, and people are like, the talent is there. Well, we're going to get to see him ideally showcase against some good pitching matchups for him to see what he can do here. But this is a fun one for him. Plus, like those Mariners, Emerson and Young. Excited to see that, both on Peoria, as they should be.
That Peoria team, holy crap. Like every night. I mean, the Padres prospects are there. The Mariners prospects are. I mean, that's going to be one hell of a fun team to watch.
Certainly, yeah. They will be an interesting one. And Salas will be their catcher too. So
yeah,
I haven't looked to exactly.
Salas and we're going to get into him, but the Braves are also on Peoria. So Drake Baldwin, who's we'll see what they're thinking with him, but there's a possibility this is your guy behind Sean Murphy in 2025.
Why not?
I mean,
you're Atlanta,
he's been successful in AAA, and Darno's contract is up this year, or maybe it is next year. But regardless,
he may have extended. I don't remember.
Well, yeah, and that's the way Anthopoulos works. But Darno also is kind of at a spot where he's playing until he moves on to a coaching career, because he's going to do that at some point. But right now he's just kind of playing out the string until he's done with that. And, I mean, he's 35. So I was looking here. He does have a team option for next year. So I'm sure there's going to be some consideration there, depending on what they see out of Baldwin. Do we want to exercise that option? So
it's an important fall league for him. Cubs have sent Moises Ballesteros, Leodis, wow, I nailed that. DeVries of the Padres, another J2 highly touted guy, is going. He'll be with Peoria. So that is going to be quite the middle infield, depending on how they set that up or rotate guys through. Whoever is playing first base should be getting a lot. I mean, they should just put a stick with a glove out there, and they don't need a person. So they got to hit the glove, and then you just see who is the best of the best for those guys defensively.
DeVries will start the season still 17. He turns 18 October 11th. So he's going to start the AFL season at 17 years old. That's kind of ridiculous to consider.
And the Padres are such an interesting team with their long-term big dollar contracts to veterans, as well as the seemingly obvious push of other prospects that we've seen. Every time they draft somebody, all of a sudden they start to get a little bit of push, and then we see them trade them off or whatever. But with these J2 guys, I mean, it's different. We'll just really have to see what they end up doing with these guys. So the Mets have Jet Williams, who's going to go. That was the other one I was getting screwed up with. Edwin Arroyo was the name. He's with the Reds, but there's also an Arroyo that was with. I think is this the same
Is
guy that
with the
was?
Mariners.
Yeah, so there is still a Mariner Arroyo.
And Edwin Arroyo was a Mariner.
So okay, so there we go. So I'm not crazy.
It's all kinds of messing you up because I
Yeah.
believe the same year that they traded away Arroyo, that year was the year that they signed Michael Arroyo.
That's right.
So they just really wanted to mess you completely up.
Yeah, it was the same jersey. So so again, more middle infielders there. He's with Glendale, and Williams will be with Scottsdale. But it should be really interesting to see.
And he missed the entire year. Arroyo did.
So he's getting at bats.
So he's getting at bats, but this is a guy who a year ago in 2023 had he had double-digit doubles, triples, home runs, and steals. Just kind of filling up all of the stat sheet. Mm-hmm. So this is a guy with plenty of all-around talent, and certainly last we saw him could stick it short. So with some discussion as to where Ellie plays long-term now, that could be a real interesting thing. If he can play short and De La Cruz moves to center field or left field, that's a big thing for the Reds to, trust a guy like that. He's got to be pretty darn good to move Ellie off of short.
Yeah. And it's also got to be the right thing. Again, like the Reds have been through the dark days. I was going to say the dog days, through the dark days, and they have come out on the other side absolutely bursting at the seams with prospect potential that they've been able to bring up. We see so many guys come up. Reese Hines was essentially forgotten, came up, overperformed, sent back down. So he's still got some pedigree, or sorry, I shouldn't say pedigree. He's still got some potential to him.
Yeah.
But then, you've got next guys up here, Arroyo and company.
You're going to see one of those guys that did that 2 years ago in Christian Encarnacion Strand.
Yeah,
some at-bats. There are, I want to say there are 4 guys with major league experience that are going to be spending time in the AFL. Normally what happens with those kind of guys, they spend a week or 2, and then they go to their team's complex. And so they just go to get a few games against competitive type of players, and then they go spend the rest of the time working out with the team's complex.
Okay. Well, hopefully that happens, just because they're MLBers as far as I'm concerned, or they should be able to, within their organization, get at bats that way. Sign a couple Mexican League MVP guys. Have Trevor Bauer pitch to these guys at your complex. Quietly. Do it quietly.
Yeah. Well, and quite frankly, why is it that, a guy like Encarnacion Strand isn't going to the Dominican Winter League for those at bats?
Australia?
I'm sure that he would. Right? I'm sure that they would love to have a guy with that kind of bat come and play in their league. Yeah. But I'm guessing, like I said, since he has their complex in Arizona, I'm sure he's going to be working between the team complex and going to games. So more than likely, he's only there for a little bit and then is gone. Kind of like what you saw out of like Jackson Jobe and Ricky Tiedemann last year. They were there for a few starts and then they're like, yep, see you later.
Right.
So
did what we were told to do. Now we're out. Somebody who does have something to prove, I would say, whether it's jumping up the list, solidifying, looking for next year, is Drew Gilbert with the Mets. Like the former Houston Astro, highly touted, like up and coming guy. What do you think Gilbert's goals might be out of this, or the organization's goals for sending him here?
I would guess. I mean, he missed so much time with injury this year. A lot of it's reps, but
so straight at bats and see
straight at bats. But I think at the same time, he's a guy who should be upper minors and hasn't had the time. I mean, he started getting hurt about the time he got to the upper minors. So this is maybe a chance for him to show, hey, I am that mature player that's ready for the upper minors, and maybe even potentially to work into your outfield mix in 2025 at some point, because that's probably about where he should be. Development wise, is at some point in 25, you would think that he would make a play for a spot and hopefully get rid of Brandon Nimmo, because nobody likes to see some guy sprint to first base after a walk. So,
I was just gonna say there is that one guy who's just consistently in the way with the Mets. Nimmo is something else.
But I mean, in all seriousness, if you're giving Jeff McNeil a crap ton of at bats in the outfield, there's room for someone like Drew Gilbert if he's healthy and performing. So I think that's what they really want to see is A, how are you showing? Are you healthy? And B, are you showing that you're taking a good at bat every time out and you're ready for the upper minors again next year right away? So
yeah, and one thing that I've heard, I forget, it was some viral comment about I don't know if it was, I think it was College Scout talking about football players, but she said she used to like to go to the games that they thought would be a blowout and see how the star recruit was on the sidelines and in the game when they were on the team that was supposed to dominate. What kind of a player is that guy? So maybe this is also an opportunity for Drew Gilbert to prove I'm a professional baseball player and I do things the right way, the professional way, because the Mets very well could send him wire to wire for this, because like you said, he's short on reps for the year. But what's he going to do with those? Is he going to take advantage? Is he going to be, doing all the routines, doing the, practices? What is it? What is Drew Gilbert for the Mets here long term? And the other one that I find very interesting, and I was like just yelling from the top of the mountains that this was an overrated pick, overranked, I should say, not rated.
Yeah.
Termarr Johnson of the Pirates, the last guy on this list of kind of notable prospects that has clout. I mean, there were concerns about position. It looks now like he's a second baseman. So immediately we're limiting ourselves. It's not quite catcher depression level for me, but a young guy who goes to the Pirates, not known for developing, especially consistency within those players, right? Think O'Neal Cruz and how everybody's hoping for more. And, you name the Pirate prospect that has underachieved, you name a Pirate prospect that's overachieved. And I won't talk about trucks. But Johnson, like, this also almost seems early to me, Ben. Like, I would have thought just let him have an off season and then next year would be his push year.
I think it's just for him, a lot of it is just he's actually kind of found where that swing grooves. When he came out, he had such a contact-oriented swing, and everyone went, this is a future, batting champion, multi-times over
hitter.
And he hit well his first, coming out. And then he said, you know what? I am going to start to groove my swing a little bit. And problem is that basically turned him into a 3 true outcome guy, and where he's hitting 240, and he's got some power, but he doesn't have the oomph in his bat to be a 3 true outcome guy. He's a 20 home run guy,
right.
Not a guy who's going to pop out 30-40. And so maybe you'll walk 100 times, and so therefore you're on base, and he's got good enough speed. I mean, 22 steals this year. So, I mean, he's not a nothing on the base paths, but when he really arched that swing, it killed his doubles power, which is something he used to do very well. But he seems to have really settled into that swing well, and if you're happy with that, he's maximizing that swing now. And so maybe it's, he's been up to AA now with that swing. We'll let him go get some run in the AFL with it, so he knows what he's got to work on when he gets full-time in AA next year.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, like my concern with him was, you nailed it. He changed who he was at draft day to who he is today. So do the Pirates want to get him back to contact first, or do the Pirates want to see what he can really do from a power standpoint? I mean, I'm anti-power for somebody like this, because I hate seeing guys with sub 240 averages hitting for a lot of power. And I mean, it's sure they can like help you in fantasy for certain periods of time, but there's a lot to be said for a guy who can hit 280 plus and move guys around the base paths and OBP themselves, 350 plus. Like
his profile, I loved. A guy who might get you 35, 40 doubles and hit you, like you said, 280 plus with a 400 on base. God, give me that all day long. And a guy, I think every lineup in the majors wants a guy like that hitting near the top of their lineup. You keep moving guys around. I mean, that's the prototype old number 2 hitter. And now, we're putting Mike Trout number 2,
So he could be a
different,
Pirates
but
perfect system 8 hitter, 7-8 hitter.
yeah, that's
in the sense that like he's moving the power hitters that are on base in. He's moving them around. He's keeping the inning alive. And that's more like you were saying, in a more modern era versus the olden days when you would put that guy up. But then you run into certain teams like Toronto for some reason earlier this year realized that OBP was a good thing. And they were like, oh, well, then let's put the guys who have good OBP up. Davis Schneider, you're doing well. Okay, you're now up. Like you're being put in a terrible position for who you are. But let's have you lead off. Let's have you in the top of the lineup when he should be your 6 through 9 type guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually fell back, and he ended up having a disastrous sophomore season versus his overperforming rookie year. And for Johnson, I certainly don't want to see Pittsburgh continue to go the power route with him. But when he was on I thought he was going to be empty average. That was my big gripe when he was drafted, was like he got drafted really high. We don't really know what's going to be there. And maybe Pittsburgh is like, well, we know what's going to be there. There's going to be power to unlock, which is why he's doing what he's currently doing, which scares me to think they're not going to go, well, let's go back to that kind of average guy you were.
Yeah.
Or like, let's do a big 2-strike approach change for you. So anyway, there's something for me to really be watching with him this year. I don't have him anywhere, but I always like to get a high drafted guy on a low, like we talked about before, low value, get him back in a trade, which leads us to the other notables.
Well, and before we do that, first, Eddie has mentioned Garrett Anderson is that type of guy that you were talking about. But Eddie asked a good question, and I just pulled up last year's stat sheet from the Arizona Fall League. Guys who had big success this year out of last year's AFL. Big success being a tough road to hoe. Let's just put it that way. But Nasim Nunez spent the entire year in the major leagues after being a Rule 5 guy. He was an Arizona Fall guy, and that's, like we talked about, there's a lot of these guys here who are showcasing to be, Rule 5 guys, and whether or not they're going to be protected. And Nasim Nunez got selected probably because someone saw him here. Victor Scott stole 18 bases last year, obviously hit the struggle bus in the majors, but he made it to the majors. Kyle Manzardo last year he finished 1 behind the home run leaders. So he's 1 off from the home run leaders and ended up making it to the majors. And we listed him as one of our top rookies this year. When we were talking about that earlier, it was CJ Alexander's one that was there last year. He didn't have a great AFL, but apparently whatever he did convinced the Orioles that he was ready to, or the Royals that he was ready to move up, and he ended up getting some good playing time this year with them. I was just trying to pull this up here because their pitching I thought was better. I'm trying to remember Davis Daniel, if you remember him, came up. He pitched well came up with the Angels this year. Roy Salinas. Boy, there's just a whole list of pitchers. Carson Spires pitched a lot this year in the bullpen for the Reds.
So I've got an interesting comparable here to Eddie's question of this past year.
My best one from last year, but anyway.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ben. Sorry.
The best one from last year that I'm finding, I was like, I know that there was a pitcher that I really like. DJ Hers pitched last year in the AFL, and he was excellent for Washington this year after he came up. So there's probably Hers and Manzardo are probably your best guys this year that played in the AFL last year.
And what I was just quickly looking at, which is the same thing that seems to happen with some of the Rule 5 type guys. It's not the year before that you really look at and you're like, look at those instant results. It's 2 years out. So if you look at the 2022 guys, there were some highly touted guys who went, who have still not debuted. There are other guys, Noelvi Marte, Henry Davis, Jason Dominguez, Quinn Priester, let's see, Mason Wynn, Andy Pages, Nick Gonzalez, Jack Kilof, Jackson Merrill.
They were this guy named Ethan Miller was in that year. Was 22.
Never heard him. But yeah, so that goes back to it. Like, this one is like flush because these guys have had, after this debut or whatever highlight type season, highlight league, they then had a full year of potential minor leagues, and that this past year where they could have come up and debuted, like Addison Barger did for Toronto, to a lower level of success. Like basically every team, Heston Kierstad was one of those guys. Like,
I'll mention
everyone I'm looking at.
One guy on here that I know used the AFL and used struggles in the AFL and became a pretty solid major leaguer this year is Jack Kakanowicz. With the Angels, he got lit up in the AFL and realized that my four seam is not so great. And so, oh my gosh, Adarsh. he's commenting on Rob. For those of you who are listening and cannot read the comment, Adarsh is wondering who this new guy that I'm doing the podcast with is. And Robbie had a run-in with his razor. The razor won, and so therefore Robbie no longer has a beard. So, but no, Kakano changed the way he approached hitters. I mean, just quite frankly said, you know what? I don't give a flying leap about strikeouts. I'm getting outs. And that may not make him an incredibly attractive fantasy guy, but it gave him a lot of success this year with the Angels. You know, he did not get a lot of strikeouts, but he got through a lot of innings for the Angels this year.
The more I'm looking here at the 2022, and Kakanowicz, like you said, was one of the guys. He was a 2022. I am super interested at looking at these 2023 guys and really very strategically. Yeah, I'll use strategery to try to pick some of these guys up, because it seems like the best thing is you get your AFL, that is your promotion. Then you get your next year medicine in the minors, but you have that AFL highlight, and that's either confidence or motivation, whatever it becomes for each athlete. But then it allows so many of these better players to just like rise up.
Lawrence Butler. I mean,
the list is amazing.
The list is amazing. Yeah, if you go down it,
yeah, like and some of it's pockets of success, and some of it is Cole Keith. There's just every type of guy is on it, so it's an excellent one. So from the list that we'll be talking about in 2027 of guys that are 2 years removed, I've put together a list. That's what we'll now call it. We're going to call it the 2027 superstars. But these are the other notables.
Yep.
And we do have a few Angels to start off with here. And my favorite guy of the list is Sam Bachman, because this is a shoulder injury. He's here to, ideally, he's here to start to wire to wire, start to finish, so that he can pitch. Hopefully three and 4 innings at a time. They're not going to push anybody hard, but I'd like to see Bachman get some time. And then one of the other ones is a quiet prospect from the Angels, second baseman Cole Fontenelle. I'm pretty sure I did that right.
Third base.
Okay, thank you. I knew it was a base. He did something with bases. But he is an injured player coming back. And this is like, in some leagues, he's not rostered, I think over 20% in Fantrax. Some leagues he's sitting out there, and this will be if he really like mashes like I think he could, this will be a holy crap, look at this guy moment here.
And is a guy who with TCU in college, you saw him and you went, yeah, that's it. That's what it looks like. That's what a guy is. Switch hitter, power from both sides, ability. I mean, really a good clean strike zone. There was really not a hole in his strike zone, in his swing, either side of the plate. You're like, this is a guy who's going to end up coming up and be a 280 hitter with high OBP, and he's going to launch 25 bombs a year. And he actually kind of was at that pace to start that. Well, although he stole 12 bases in 22 games. I would never have predicted that watching him play baseball, because he's a big guy. He kind of runs a little bit like Freddie Freeman, kind of the big lumbering strides to get going. But Freeman stole 20 bases last year. So I suppose, if they're not expecting you to, you can kind of get away with that. But he had a 405 on base this year. and 278 average in his first 22 games in Double-A. I mean, seriously, that's exactly what I thought he would be. Is that kind of a guy, good average, good on base, and give you enough power to definitely keep him on your roster. And then he got hurt. So now that he's healthy and back,
yeah, we'll see. And TCU, for anyone who's not sure, is the college university. All right, so we do have a Marlin of note. I guess there's multiple Marlins of note. I only wrote down the one that I'm kind of interested in. Jun-Suk Shim, starting pitcher, because I want to see what they do with some of these pitchers.
Yeah.
I mentioned with Bachman, I hope he gets 3 to 4 innings at a time. I hope they're not giving him 9 batters, one through the lineup to see what he can do, whether that's an inning and change or that's 3 innings, 3 up, 3 down. But with Shim, I'm also kind of curious as to what the plan is. And Miami, new organization for Shim. What are they?
Holy crap talent. Just a holy crap level of talent here. But didn't pitch at all this year. I think he's got 8 career innings.
That's plenty. I think he's in line for one of those guaranteed contracts, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, isn't that about what Spencer Schwellenbach had coming into this year? So, I mean, he should be in line for 130 major league innings next year, right?
They're perfect. So, and Miami might need it, depending. Like, they seem to have arms fall off. So the fact they sent a pitcher was interesting. But it
heads
made
are
sense why.
Off.
Yeah. Yeah, so for Shim, it is going to be interesting to see what happens with him. I mean, Ben, you and I talked about this before with Robert Hassell. He's coming back not once, not twice, 3 times. So is this the charm? Is this the charm? Like, talk about prospect fatigue from somebody who was hyped up from the moment they entered the prospect stratosphere. Robert Hassell peaked early and has unfortunately come down and down and down that mountain. He was once part of a trade for Juan Soto, who has also changed, or who has since changed organizations and is about to make an awful lot of money in free agency.
And he just turned 23 in August. In Double-A this year, had a 271 with a 357 on base. It was looking like, hey, this could be what we've been waiting on. And then he got to AAA and hit 125. And I mean, it just fell completely apart. So,
and that's what the AFL might be for this year.
Yeah. And he did miss quite a bit of time due to injury, but he really, like you said, he just has fallen completely off. And what is he going forward now? I mean, third time going out to the AFL. So far he had 1 year where he played 2 games and left. So really kind of not even there. But, and last year with Scottsdale, he was pretty solid. 290 batting average, 366 on base, 6 steals. You had this idea that, well, maybe this is the Hassell we've all been waiting for. And no, not yet. So that type of hitter alongside Dylan Cruz and James Wood, and now what they're getting out of Jacob Young in center field, would make for a really good 4-headed outfield. If you could get a good contact guy, and then Young just gives you such just incredible defense and has lots of speed. And if you had Hassell in there and you can rotate around the DH spot and getting some days off and things, man, that would be a really fun grouping as far as players. But they got to all be healthy. And Hassell's got to figure out how to hit above Double-A right now. So.
Yeah. And like Washington did what I didn't want them to do, which was they signed those 1-year free agents to try to trade them off. And they did successfully, with Winker. But they also had, I think it was Alex Call was the guy who came up, was not good, got sent down, but then came back up and was like electric in, August, and then got injured, sadly. But he's 29, I think, 28, 29, something like that for 30, next year.
Yeah.
So he's pushing his way out. So he's not part of this conversation, but this is the time for Hassell to prove. And I'm trying to remember if he needs to be put on the 40-man or not, but that's more of a late November conversation beyond.
He definitely needs to be a 40-man. But
Yeah, because somebody would take a chance on him if he is
oh yeah,
potentially in line with that. But yeah, so he is an interesting name here, but also I think the only three-time or will be three-time guy here. Phillies have a trio of dudes at 50 minutes because I'm keeping track, and then I'm going to let Govino. I'm going to send him a message right after and say these are the timestamps. Phillies got Brian Rincon. Sounds like a baseball player already. Sounds like an Oakland A. Oh wait, they're dead. Shortstop for Phillies also have starting pitcher Wenhu Pan, who I just personally want to see his journey. You know, there's that watch guy who goes to a park and just puts the thing up and times it, and then somebody runs up and says, "Love your journey." Whoever that guy is, I'm the guy who runs up and says, "Love your journey" to Wenhu Pan. I just want to see how this goes. And then Griff McGarry, who in 2020 was drafted, and I remember being told by my fun, exciting inside scouter guy, he's like, he is going to go to the majors quick because they're going to put him in the pen. They don't think he's got starting caliber stuff. They love the electricity from the pen. And then it turned out he was wrong, and they tried to make him a starter. And now he has done the failed starter thing where he's now an RP. And what do you think he's going to do here, Ben? Do you think they'll put him in a position, try to get some saves? Like, what's the deal?
Well, the big issue is normally you see a guy go from rotation to pen and the stuff ticks up.
Yeah.
And this year, his stuff didn't. His stuff was what he's been using as a starter primarily. He just narrowed down and got rid of the third and fourth pitch. Well, the fourth, really. So, he just kind of concentrated on his three pitches.
Strike, you mean? He stopped throwing the strike.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing is and that's always been an issue for McGarry is finding the strike zone. But that's the other thing. You move into the bullpen, it's less of an issue. If you walk a guy in a 1-inning stint, you can usually get out of that because you've got strikeout stuff and you get away with it. But his stuff never ticked up. And so when he's facing these guys, he just, you were hoping that you move him to the bullpen. He's a guy that comes up and does like an Orion Kerkering thing for you by the end of the year, where suddenly he's making a splash for you in September and maybe pushes his way into the playoff bullpen. Not at all. I mean, it was not a great first year in the bullpen for him. So more than anything, I think they just wanted to have him get on the stinking mound and go, that's the catcher's mitt. Hit it.
Keep throwing it hard, but yeah.
I mean, it's frustrating as someone who, I mean, I got to admit, as a Braves fan, it's kind of fun to not see Phillies prospects do well. But also as a prospects fan, I like to see guys develop and do well. And so there's this duality in my brain that, woohoo, he's not finding it. That's one more arm they don't have. But at the same time, you're watching a guy not develop, and it's like, God, that's painful to watch. It's just really painful to watch a guy just not move forward.
Well, because he was
necessarily backwards. He just didn't go forward.
Yeah. He has been the same thing essentially from draft time, but he was supposed to be one of the big three, not big three, but whatever, one of the three top guys with Painter and Mick Abel, and he's the one who's fallen off. Obviously, Painter with an injury, and Abel is being brought along slowly. Thank goodness they're not doing anything crazy with him like the Caden Dana with the Angels bringing him up from AA. But he's had an interesting rise. Somebody that I was hoping was going to become like legit top 100 everywhere, top 10 starting pitcher guy with Arizona. Yu Min Lin. He's getting sent there as a lefty starting pitcher. And also fun, interesting story. I don't know if it's fun, but like certainly quite the story. Outfielder for Arizona, Christian Robinson getting sent. And I believe we've broken him down once already this year and talked about his story. So,
and it'll be fun just to see him back on the field. I raw talent wise, loved watching him play. Problem is, he quite literally did not play from the end of the 2019 season to the beginning of the 23 season. That's a long time to be off the baseball field. So it's definitely shown up in his game. He still looks like the teenager that he was, which was all well and good, but then you got to develop from that. And he's now 22, 23 and hasn't developed those skills that you would think that he would have over the last 3-4 years. So
yeah, and that's what maybe the fall league can be a fun story for him.
Yeah, Lynn is a guy. I've always thought he got away with crap because when watching
he's not tall, right? He's not tall.
He's not. Yeah,
you know who's a good comp for him? You know, I got a good comp. Marcus Stroman.
No, watching him pitch, and of course, this is going to go off terrible too. But watching him pitch reminded me a lot of like Chan-Ho Park, which of course you're going to go, oh, it's the Asian comparison.
Yeah,
but
you know, racist, man.
Yeah, I know. But you know, I'll take that just because Park was 6'2", so not a whole lot different, and was right-handed. It's completely different body, but it's the way that he pitches that I always thought, God, how does Park get away? And then he very quickly stopped being able to get away with it. Park had like a 3-4 year run where he could, and then all of a sudden it was like, yeah, you know, when you give up 30 home runs a year, it eventually catches up to you. And that's kind of what Lynn is going to have to work around. But he did so far, or last year, and I don't know. He's interesting. He'll be really fun to watch and just see how they handle him.
Yeah, certainly. Like, he is one of the guys who I want to see from an arm standpoint be a potential league leader in innings covered.
Yes,
just because I want to see
absolutely.
how he does. You know, like I want to see Bachman. I want to see Junso Kim. Monteverde, I guess, is another Marlin that's there, I believe. They're guys who I want to see pitch. I want to see what they can tally up. And if I can see good things from Lynn in this, that'll give me more confidence. But he was a sleeper type prospect 2 years ago. He's held that through to this year. So this is our next opportunity where more eyes are going to get an opportunity to really check him out and evaluate him. So I want to see what he can do there. KC, I've got a couple catchers. We're super boring, but even I wrote them down. Or did I write them down?
I wrote them down, which is, I was like, I put the catchers out here, and you chewed me out. But there's a reason for both of them, and it's because there's some legit next year potential for you to be considering. Carter Jensen is one level ahead right now of Blake Mitchell, who's one of those guys who's probably a top 50-ish prospect most places. Jensen is really good in his own right and probably is going to be in a couple top 100s over the course of the winter. But I think Mitchell is the superior catcher, which means this might be an opportunity for Kansas City to say, you know what, catch one day a week, go play third one day a week, go play left field one day a week. Let's see what you got other places. Let's try you out a little bit around the diamond. Because Jensen is a much better athlete than you would think for a catcher. He's a legit 15 to 20 steal guy on the bases, and that's as a catcher. You know, if he was put out in left field, there's a chance he might give you 25, 30 steals because he would frankly not have the wear and tear on his legs that he does right now. Baldwin, we mentioned him earlier. Atlanta, very well, Drake Baldwin may have an opportunity to be that backup guy next year, depending on what he shows here.
Which I love that is even potentially on the table, Ben. Knowing that you can go into something like the AFL and how well you're able to handle yourself, the position, you know, your pitching staff, whatever, you could actually, from this, be ready to take a roster spot.
Yeah.
Like, and minimal expectations. It's not like he's vying for a starting role, but like, I love that. I think that's an amazing thing that the fall league can offer.
And he is a guy who he did play all of this year in the upper minors, but you know, this was a 3rd round pick out of Missouri State University. And all of a sudden just kind of jumped onto radars because he hit 16 home runs last year, and moved his way up to Double-A by the end of the year. But then this year, he played most of his season in Triple-A. And in Triple-A, his slash line was 298, 407, 484. You'll take that all day long out of a catcher.
Yeah.
And, you know, folks might remember in the Futures game, he was the guy from the Braves that hit the home run in the Futures game. So, I mean, this is a guy who he's shown off quite a bit this year. Whether they'll make that decision with with d'Arnaud, or they'll simply, one of the things they could do is give d'Arnaud that 1 year team option.
Yep.
And then this is going to be your 2026 guy. And he'll, flip between AAA and the majors next year whenever, because that Murphy and d'Arnaud are going to get hurt at some point and they'll need a backup guy out of AAA. Well, rather than calling up Chadwick Tromp, they'll be able to call up Drake Baldwin next year and get his feet wet, and then have him slide over into that second catcher role starting in 26 maybe. But regardless, this is a guy who, you talked about 2 years down the road. 2 years down the road, this could be a guy that fantasy players are going to want to know, especially in 2 catcher leagues. So
right. Yeah. Excellent. And somebody that I'm interested in, and we talked about him a few weeks back, but I'm glad you put him on the list, is Chicago White Sox, hopefully future starting pitcher, Grant Taylor, injury riddled, and I think it's 19 pro innings he's got under his belt right now, 32 Ks. The line
Tommy
looks
John,
good. It's tiny line, so this is important.
Tommy John with LSU, he was on the same LSU team as Skeens, and had Tommy John during their College World, or ended up having to have Tommy John during their College World Series run. And so he's just getting back on the mound. If you go for a year after that, that would have been this June. And so we're just a couple months into him actually getting some legit pitching. He is showing all the stuff of a guy who could be a frontline starter. This was supposed to be their number 1 starter with Skeens as their number 2. Like, to let you know how good this guy was at LSU, he was supposed to be the front of the rotation guy over Skeens. And I really want to see him. I want to see him be able, by the end of this, I want to see him go 4. That's what I want to see.
Okay.
And not a lot of guys down in Arizona go 4 consistently. I mean, like Joey Wentz last year did, but Joey Wentz was down there to get innings because they knew they wanted him as a swing man this year in the Tiger bullpen. And so they wanted him to get innings so he could consistently show that he could go that deep. Most other guys are going 2-3 innings and then diving out for a reliever to get some innings. I want to see Taylor get at least 1 appearance of 4 innings during Arizona.
Yeah. My only fear in that is that then a whole bunch of people are going to be like, oh, who's this guy? And then they're going to have the realization of, oh, I see. He was supposed to be someone, but injuries have slowed that down. He still could be. I would like to think, because he would have been drafted everywhere, all your dynasty leagues with 20 plus prospects, someone's got him. But if he can do fine here, maybe he just isn't like the headliner, the strikeout leader or whatever. He's just good. You could still get him before next year's opening day, because at that point in time, I think the clock might start ticking on his potential to debut, because they might not want to do a 2-year development here. That's why he's in the AFL.
He could be the guy who's a Mason Miller of this group. Like that year, Mason Miller didn't lead in any categories. He didn't pitch long, but everyone said, oh my gosh, his stuff is just, nobody else has this stuff. And so there were some people taking risks on Mason Miller after that year, but most folks were like, that's probably a bullpen guy. Let's just leave him alone. Well, yeah, this year you saw, even though he's just a bullpen guy, that's a pretty significant piece to have on your fantasy team. He's, so my last guy I have on here, I threw on as I'm writing up my list for my Medium account. If you guys want to check that out, it's Chasing Baseball. Chasing Baseball Greatness is my Medium account, but I am covering every single player that has been announced for an AFL roster, with at least a little paragraph write-up so that you know who each player is. One that really struck me is Ryan Ritter. And this is the epitome of does a lot of things well and nothing great. He's everyone that talks about him says this is a gamer. This is one of those gritty guys, which honestly, I don't honestly know. I'm curious. I bet you he's a certain race when he gets that tag. I'll almost guarantee you what race he is.
Race.
I'll guarantee. I mean, when's the last time you heard? He's okay. I'll be careful how I say what I'm going to say.
Okay.
He's at least a very tan white guy if he's white. Let's just put it that way. It looks like there might be a mixed race in there. That's all. That's what I want to say.
But I enjoy you stepping all over this line.
Hey, that's just it.
It brings me much joy to hear this.
But this is everyone that I listen to talk about him raves about the way he plays the game. And you love hearing that about a player first off. Well, then he comes out and last year 24 homers, 20 steals, 281 average, 381 or 383 on base, and got himself up to Double-A by the end of the year. Take that. But 152 strikeouts in 119 games. So, okay, there's some work to do. This year, he missed some time due to injury, but pretty much same type of ratios and cut down the strikeouts significantly by percentage. I think a big reason to know who this guy is, the Rockies this year brought up Emil Amador. And everyone, they saw Ezekiel Tovar come up, and he at least handled it defensively right away. And so they said, maybe we can bring up Amador and he'll do the same. And, this year Tovar was much better offensively. Maybe we'll bring up Amador and, he'll handle it defensively. And then eventually he'll be the guy that we can next year. He'll be a good offensive player. Yeah. He just fell on his face on both sides of the ball. And so he was sent back down. Ritter could very well take that position and become that guy who moves in to second base. Brendan Rodgers, I was just looking, he's an arbitration eligible guy.
I mean, that's a tough one. If you're honestly, if you're a Rockies fan, it's totally possible they do not give him money. It's the Rockies.
It's his last year of ARB. He's only making $3.2 million, but that I think $3.2 million is absolutely justified in what he has provided you so far in his career. For a guy going into his last year of ARB, if you could swing any value out of Brendan Rodgers on the trade market, I think you'd do that.
If the Rockies were smart, that would be a great option for them to look.
Because he gave you a full year this year, 135 games, 29 doubles, 13 homers, 267 average. He gave you something to where you maybe could sell off on him. And that might open a spot for Ritter.
I do remember, Ben, last year, Ritter was amazing the first half. Just huge. And then his dynasty stock, of course, went up as a result. And then he went from single A to high A. The line went down a little bit, made sense. He was old, not old for the age. He was at the age in A ball, goes to high A, went down a little bit, but he was still good. And then finished the year in Double-A and then repeated this year fully in Double-A. But I feel like he kind of did the Rocky, let's get excited. And then has he plateaued? So I like the fact that you're talking positively about his future and potential as an MLBer, showing that, like you said, he plays the game the right way. So the fall league for me is a great time to look at him and be like, what is he outside of the Colorado system when he's just amongst a bunch of other players of note for different reasons? How does he fit amongst this group?
He went from that Fresno Park is Cal League, and it does terrible things for actually evaluating a prospect in the Rockies system. Because he had over 1,000 OPS in Fresno last year, and then got bumped up to high A, which is Northwest League, and that's a much different environment, much different parks. And all of a sudden he's like, still an 800 OPS, but significantly different hitter in that level,
right?
And then this year, Hartford is definitely hitter friendly, but it's pretty close to neutral. And, the Eastern League in general has some hitter friendly parks. So you're going to run into those, but in general, you're pretty neutral. So in a fairly neutral environment, 270, 370, 403, you'll take that. That's a solid line. That's what you want to see a guy who might have hit the hype train a little too hard right away in low A do okay like that when he gets to double A in that system. The Brewers used to have this issue. They used to have Albuquerque, and I can't remember who their double A park was, but it was holy crap hitter haven, and we see this with the Diamondbacks now. And then they get to the major leagues and you're like, not 100% sure that's what that guy is.
Right. The Blue Jays used to be used to that with Vegas.
Vegas is another bad one.
Yeah, New Hampshire was where they put the double A guys and they let them hang out there when they were in Vegas. Now they're in Buffalo, but when they were in Vegas, they had the smaller park. Guys were hitting 1 million home runs, and they would typically trade prospects at the AAA level for whatever the return was for them. And it was one of those Anthopoulos does a great job of getting these guys in the right situation in the park. Whereas with pitchers, he'll keep them in double A where they can do their best. And for hitters, he'll get them up to AAA where they can then do their best. And it was one of those so it's kind of like a showmanship thing of this is where the hitters do well. This is where the pitchers do well. And then the Angels were like, you know what? We'll just promote everybody from AA.
It's funny. He does this. Anthopoulos does the same thing now, keeping good pitchers he did keep good pitchers in the Southern League in AA with Mississippi. But now that's changing. They just closed the Mississippi Braves. They'll be the Columbus, Georgia.
That's right.
Whatever that is next year. And so
peaches or something.
Yeah. It's a kind of peach. I can't tell you exactly, but anyway.
Clingstones.
Yeah, there we go. Clingstones.
Because I remember mentioning it before.
Yeah.
And then you said it was in Georgia. I'm like, that makes more sense. I wondered why they were going to Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah. But
that's the Dumb and Dumber thing of where are we going? Whoops. You went how many miles in the wrong way? It was an honest mistake, Harry.
I was going to Springfield. Which Springfield? Oh, yeah. So, Robbie, we got a question here, and I think it leads into our final discussion point here of the night. Eddie asks, is this your last Monday Night Baseball podcast until 2025? Yes and no, Eddie. This is our last regularly scheduled Monday night podcast. We don't expect that this will be our last one before 2025, however.
Once we find out where Honeywell signs for next year after he gets the World Series ring.
Which that's going to be one of the first chips to come off the block because everyone's got to figure out where he's going so they can spend their money elsewhere. Before Soto can get signed, Honeywell's got to go so they can decide where that money is.
And they might sign together. That might be part of the package. We'll see. But yeah, we are done as of tonight with regular scheduled Monday nights. Govier is, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, and he's been a myth on here because he works. He's got a job. Not that we don't have jobs. But he's got a job that has pulled him away from Monday night. So we're going to try to find a time that will work for him in the future. And when I say that, I mean, he will tell us when he's available and we will say, yes, sir, we will see you then. Because we want him and his sound effects on because he won't let us use them. So
he will, but I'm just terrible at it.
So. Well, and he's just asked me politely not to. I think he must have talked to Ty, my former co-host with Dingers, who was like, "You listen, the control board's not something for Robbie." So there,
every and a blind squirrel,
When something fun happens, and Ben and I and Govier are available, or two of us are, or if we can line up a cool guest, as Ben and I have discussed a couple of possibilities. We will return with some notice for those. And then if the truck podcast takes off like it should, Darsh is saying I get to see Chef doing a podcast at least 3 times a week at work. That's just me talking a lot of Darsh. I'm also trying to teach you. But if you don't want to learn the fun, exciting chef things I can teach you, we can just have you peeling more shallots. There's a never-ending supply of shallots to be peeled. But anyway, so what we want to do is we want to get geared up for 2025. We want to plan out what we're going to do in the new year so that we are ramping right up as we did, big three, next three. We've got some other things in the works we've discussed, as well as some guests. If the guests are able to come on early, we'll be back when those things happen, and you'll know about it. But yeah, you'll be able to best find out about those things in advance through the Discord, which we hope you will all join up for. And X, I guess, would be the next best one to find out what people are doing and what we're up to. So it has been a fun year, to say the least, of scheduled Monday nights. I've enjoyed them. I enjoyed going through the big three, next three. And it's been great joining, both you and you, Ben, and with Mike or Govia. I should just call him that, because there's another Mike on the pod, Mike and Mike. But yeah, with you guys, it's been great. I missed a lot of it in 2023. Ty and I were not able to keep it rolling with dingers, but I'm very happy to come here and bring you down as far into the depths as I possibly can. Where you're now talking about, I think he's of a certain race guy. A lot of Marcus Stroman comps, and then the rest of it. But yeah, it has been excellent, and I'm looking forward to more. But we are now going to let the playoffs be the playoffs. Kind of get out of the way and let the playoffs be the playoffs, and let the
AFL do what it's going to do. There's no real reason for you and I to talk about the AFL every single week.
Right.
But, that's just, what we are going to be able to get on and do some things in the off season and have fun with that. And that's what we'll see when those things work, because there's lots of fun things we can do. And just for Eddie,
Utah, give me 2.
There we go.
Boom.
But so, Robbie, I want to say I have appreciated having you on this year. It gives, obviously, you challenged me quite a bit on making sure I know my depths when we got into the big three, next three, because you would often pick out at least one guy that I'm like, I have heard that name or I've read that name, but I could not tell you jack crap about him. So
I own him in all my dynasty leagues.
Yeah, Robbie's like, and I have him in the.
That's my guy. That's my guy. Yeah.
Really, I think I might have heard of him when he was playing in high school.
Didn't he do winter ball? Didn't he do winter ball one year? No, it was indie league, but he's back.
But that I have appreciated that, because it allows us to have it gives us good depth where we can talk. There's lots of folks that'll talk the top 100 prospects and maybe top 200. They'll get into the guys that are at the very tippy top. But, I'm going to use this example because he's shown through today and shown through for my Braves. Spencer Schwellenbach was not a top 200 guy last year. We talked about him on our podcast. When we were doing the big three, next three, Schwellenbach was a guy that I brought up on the next three. So these are the type of guys we get into that aren't normally being covered by national stuff. So we'll be back. We're going to have lots of fun things for you. I'm excited for it. I'm also excited to have a little free time on a Monday night too. So I'm sure my wife is excited to see me a little bit. I have some personal big news that I can't really announce quite yet. So just kind of keep looking for my social medias, because there's some stuff that I don't have the control over making the announcement on. So, but stuff that's going to get announced here real soon. So
my big announcement here, Ben, I don't know how well you guys can see this if you're looking at home. That's my new purchase.
Got yourself a Jeep.
1984 CJ7. I didn't buy it for that. I'm taking all of the fun parts of it and I'm going to put it into my 1954 truck. So I am debating on actually taking the time to make my YouTube account into a YouTube channel. And I might do that because I feel like this hasn't been done before. So that's part of what I'll be doing on my free Monday nights, outside of obviously sitting on my butt for 90 minutes, just scrolling through Baseball Reference and looking at random names and looking at MLB.
Being like, man, this would be a fun guy to get a good drop to. Oh. Well,
but anytime anything happens, it's all, it gets recorded, right? When a prospect will do something neat, it'll be in our notes. And then when we get together again, we'll make sure that we're discussing those things so that we can share the info. Cause it's more fun for me to hear somebody say, hey, thanks so much because of such and such, or because I've been listening to you guys, I did better in my league, or I made my playoffs.
Yeah.
Or even better, I won money. And then it's like, well, you can send us some. And then like, here's my info. But I'm happy just to hear that we've helped somebody because,
Yes.
Despite the contractual obligations, Govier does not pay us. And because we have not yet been able to put together my Canadian money and your American money, we have not put a lawsuit together against him in small claims court because he keeps flipping countries. So we can't figure out where to ding him at.
Yeah.
So,
but at the same time, if you sign up on YouTube and subscribe, and you get all your friends to subscribe, maybe we could start making a little money from that. But
yeah,
regardless, come check us out on the Discord. That's linked in the description on this for both, if on all of your podcast catchers and also on the YouTube. There's a link to our Discord. Come join. We'll be talking prospects. We had a big chat going on today during the doubleheader with a bunch of Mets fans and then myself on the other side. So, but that was kind of the way it worked. But in all seriousness, there's a lot of really, really fun topics we get into on that Discord. And it's not just baseball. So come join. Right. You'll have a good time chatting and get you primed up and you'll always know when we're going to do our next show. That we always release that on the Discord so that folks know when to tune in and all that good stuff. So Ben, 862 YouTube subscribers.
Ooh. No way in hell without us they hit 1,000. So at what point in the new year will we hit 1,000 subscribers? Because I'm not saying that they won't because of football, because they're not good at football analysts or as analysts. I'm saying that football's stupid and that baseball is better. I'm leaving that alone. January or February, March, or we're going to have to get into April?
I think we're going to get late February because we're going to start hitting our big next three. Yeah. And after the new year, and they'll
just all come running.
That'll start come running, and by the time we get into spring training, will start. Pitcher catchers will start to show up mid-February, so you'll get a couple weeks into spring training. Folks will go, "Who is this guy on this team? Oh, Ben and Robbie already talked about the prospects from there. Let me go see if they talked about him." And sure enough, we will have, and they'll say, "You know what? That was good info. I will subscribe." There we go. That's as my
you have
Ben's
done
dream
all year,
scenario.
Ben, as you have done all year, I think you nailed that one too. I think we're going to look for the mid-late February to monetize this bad boy, and then the merch starts dropping.
There we go. I mean, but anyway, I already have baseball cards.
That's right. Yes, you do.
They already have Palazzo baseball cards of me, and if I do say so myself, mine are the best, and I do have them signed. I have a number of them signed. So,
So maybe for 1,000, you do a giveaway of one if you think it's affordable. I don't want to ruin your retirement plans by asking you to give them away. But anyway, well, we'll see.
Let's see.
Yeah. Yes, I have seen that card before. I love that card.
With the signature, no less. If you
of course. Now, do you have it as a one of? Is it listed as a
one of? No. Although I hand sign every one of them. So, I mean, technically, every signature is just a little different.
Yeah, Eddie's saying we should sell Palazzo t-shirts. Trust me, Govier is trying to push G-strings on us, but he says we got to do a photo shoot. It's a whole thing, Eddie. It's a whole thing. And now
my wife has issues with this, and I mean, there's just I don't want to cause any more marital discourse than I do on my own. So let's kind of keep that to a minimum.
Yeah. So maybe next year we'll be better at it than we are this year because we don't know how to end a podcast, but I'll try right now. Okay. We thank each and every one of you who has listened. And if you've listened this far, as the YouTubers say, we really do thank you because we enjoy talking, obviously. And we hope that it's been helpful to you. Absolutely. That could be the name of this podcast. Blah, 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 blah. But on behalf of myself, Robbie, and Ben, and Govier and the rest of the Prospects team and the Palazzo team, thank you guys so much. And we are looking forward to speaking with you again and big time in 2025.
Bye.